Now, speaking of favorite things, I can't believe how good of a theater experience I had watching Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is what it was called at the time. Now I think it's just Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, but the seventh Mission Impossible film that came out in summer of 2023, right around the time of Barbie and Oppenheimer. But the seventh Mission Impossible movie, I think might have been, I said at the time, and I still might say this, that it might have been my favorite film of that year. And I think a large part of it had to just do with the theater experience that I had, because I can't remember the last time I had a theater experience that was that riveting, where it was so glued to the screen, so tense, every action scene, the musical cues, everything about it was just such a perfect and amazing theater experience. I remember walking out of that movie and going, that was incredible. And I don't do that often these days, not since the Endgames and Infinity Wars of the world. But, I remember walking out of Mission Impossible 7 being like, that was just phenomenal. And so I could not wait for part 2. I thought Mission Impossible 7 was one of the better Mission Impossible films that they'd done. And obviously, it was a part 1 at the time, because it was going to be Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which was 7, and then Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2, which was 8. And, it was going to lead one into the other. And I was kind of worried before Mission Impossible 7. I was like, is this going to be a case of, cliffhanger, stay tuned for part 2. And, it did what I think a perfect part 1 should have done, which was, of course, set up part 2, right? Because part 2 we know is coming with a Sebastopol submarine. And that's basically, they have the keys now and they're all fighting for them. But it also completed the story of the first film. The seventh film, I guess, in a weird way. And I thought that was spectacularly well done. And so I've been waiting with eager anticipation. Whatever year Mission Impossible 8 was going to come out, I believe it was going to come out in 2025 originally, but I think or 2024, excuse me, but I think it's now 2025, in the summer of 2025. And now we have our first trailer and a couple interesting revelations in there, not even related to the trailer itself. But first, let's talk about the trailer itself for Mission Impossible 8. So it is basically the greatest hits of Mission Impossible films. You see all the actors coming back, I believe, that were, in previous Mission Impossible, at least the recent iterations of Mission Impossible films. I think I saw Angela Bassett in there at one point. I saw Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames, obviously. I think Simon Pegg was in there somewhere. All the classic actors, and also the new actors that they've been bringing into the fold as well, like Haley Atwell. And so it's got all the, obviously your Tom Cruise. Of course, it says, starring Tom Cruise, because it is a Tom Cruise vehicle. But it's got all the, I think it's going to be a big send-off kind of Mission Impossible film. Now, the stunts in the trailer, and it's just a teaser trailer, guys. I'm not trying to read too much into it. None of the stunts, it didn't look like they had a signature set piece like the one in Mission Impossible 7, where he's driving the motorcycle off the cliff, or Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, where he's climbing the Burj Khalifa, or anything like that. But I think what I saw was an amalgamation of all sorts of crazy things that he's doing. Like, he's hanging off that propeller plane at one point, and then he's diving into the water. And what Mission Impossible 8 is going to be is just the greatest hits of all the stunts that Tom Cruise has done in the past Mission Impossible films, which I think is really fun, really exciting. Now, obviously, story comes first, and so we do get some hints of the story here. One final mission where you see this, I think you see the Sebastopol, you see the keys, and so there's still, it's this AI program, right, which I think is also a really interesting way to take the franchise, given the state of the world right now with AI and artificial intelligence and technology. So again, really prescient storyline as well. And you get everything you want in a Mission Impossible movie. The music, obviously, the classic theme, and the new orchestral versions of these themes that they've been doing. The title sequence of these Mission Impossible movies just gets my blood pumping. It gets the heart going and the adrenaline pumping. It's so good. It's so good. And even hearing it in the trailer is amazing. And then obviously we get copious amounts of Tom Cruise running. It's become such a meme, and it was so ironic at one point that it's almost become unironic at this point that, yeah, of course you need Tom Cruise running in a Mission Impossible movie. So we get all sorts of, Mission Impossible, just Mission Impossible tropes, but it's not a bad thing. It's really what I want, from a final Mission Impossible movie. Let's send it off on a high note, because the recent films, especially starting from 4, have been awesome. They've been amazing, starting from there's Protocol, then you have Fallout, I believe, and then Rogue Nation. I think it's Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and then Fallout maybe, and then Dead Reckoning Part 1. So really excited about that. Now, the other interesting reveal that was in this trailer is that the title has changed. And we got hints of that because I think when Mission Impossible 7 was heading to streaming and heading to on demand, they actually took out Part 1 of the title. And so it was called Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which originally was called Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which is the longest title in the history of anything ever. It was a really long title for sure. Although I think part of it was, it had less to do with the title being long and more of just the whole part one of it all. Because I think movies have been straying away from that recently. Infinity War was going to be part one. Across the Spider-Verse was going to be part one. So I think studios are maybe starting to learn that that's just not the most effective way to market a film. And they have called Mission Impossible 8, Mission Impossible, the Final Reckoning, which I feel like, if I remember correctly, Dead Reckoning was the name of something in Mission Impossible 7, so it's kind of interesting that they just renamed it the Final Reckoning. But honestly, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's just a title, and at the end of the day, I'm just excited that this film is coming out next summer, guys. It's coming out so soon. It's going to be one of my most anticipated films of 2025. So guys, what did you think about the trailer for Mission Impossible, the Final Reckoning? Are you excited for this film, and what are you hoping for this 8th Mission Impossible entry? Let me know in the comments down below.